Hi, I'm Francois from Production Music Live. Today, taking producer notes here, we are looking at the style of labels like This Never Happened, Anjunadeep, and artists like Ben Böhmer, Klur, and Solanca. And I have a fully arranged track in front of me, only using Ableton Live instruments and stock effects, no third-party plugins. And it has an intro part. Then the beat is kicking in and we are adding a bass line. Then we have this melody part we just listened to, which then leads us into a break. And then we are slowly building it up towards the sort of drop part, which then gets a bit more like a climax vibe towards this 73rd bar. Let's go through these elements one by one and study what makes the style, study how it comes together, study what it does and what it doesn't do, so we can learn from it and maybe apply some of these techniques in our own productions. And I'm going to copy some of these elements here in the back and we can take a closer look at them. This project, by the way, is called Together Again. I'm here in the PML Everything bundle, basically the collection of all types of sound packs we made in last weeks, last couple of months, last couple of years. And it's in this project files folder here as well. So we are starting with a kick from D Premium Volume 6. That's DPV6. That's how they can be identified. And it has this bass kick sample. And on top of it, this top kick element. Here put together in a drum rack and played at the same time. And we have a bit of saturation and a bit of glue compression and then EQing that thing mid-side. Yeah, I mean, this needs some cleanup in the middle. And it just gets this low cut on the side, so we don't introduce any stereo information where we don't want any of it. And we also get rid of the boxiness here. All right, so let's take a look at the claps here. I'm copying over this clap element and moving it here. And we have a bunch of layered elements here. If we go into the MIDI, these quite organic sounds, also from D Premium Volume 6. And some of them are taken out of loops here. And some are one-shots. And they're layered together. And that works nicely, and we even layer more if I'm taking this one. You can hear another group of layered claps, and these are more clean, more digital. And then we have this element, which makes it, you know, with velocities going downwards here. Makes it sound more interesting, more natural altogether. And then in processing, we had an EQ here, cutting off the low and removing resonance and high information there. And here we have a drum bus. Let's listen with and without it. Well, it could be more emphasized, honestly. And then we are also cutting off low end here. And then we have this delay element, which allows us to bring it in over time, which we're doing here towards the end of this part leading into the break. Okay, and then we also have a bunch of toms. Copying this over quickly, and these are also from Deep Premium Volume 6, here Tim Engelhardt loop, and we are taking the first tom element, cutting the low end and cutting some of the mids, and then we are using the spectral resonator from the audio effects to manipulate the sound of this tom, because so far it's doing this. And then we are putting E2 into it. That's how you can apply it. We are taking 33% and then a glue compressor behind it. Just compressing the signal, making it more tight. Shakers, next element. Basically, we have shaker loops to the left and to the right. It's exactly the opposite of what I just clicked on. And we make them play for 4 hits all the time. And we balance this one completely to the right, this one here completely to the left, and then we are adding overdrive on top to make sure it really cuts nicely through the mix. Removing all the other frequencies we don't need for this sound, and then this is our sidechain element. You can use a sidechain, you can use a compressor to sidechain or some external third-party tool, or you can use the volume shaper and sort of set it up like this in quarter notes and then have it control the gain via a utility, which is also, it works in 4 to the floor dance music. It doesn't work so well in other kinds of music. So be careful when you make hip hop with this kind of stuff. And the next element is a hi-hat. Just an off hi-hat. And take a look at these ones here. That's a bit more shaker-ish. Like widening or broadening the sound here, beefing it up. But make sure to cut the high frequency information here, otherwise it gets busy very quickly. And then we have this other hi-hat element here, which is, it's not a hi, it's a bell. And let's take a look at what this one is doing. By the way, the one before was playing always the third position. And this one is playing deet, 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 deet. So a nice bell element, and we put a little bit of reverb, a room reverb with 1 second decay time, so quite a short reverb on top of it. And then we are notching out everything we don't need. Good. And the next element is this hat loop. So let's take a look at what this one is doing. Ah, it's a ride type element. Getting quieter and quieter. So take a closer look. And this one is coming in the climactic kind of part here. It's not really playing before. This is what you really add in when you want to give it more energy, even on top of everything else. And again, this one has the sidechain thing here, and then it has this auto pan set quite to extremes, so it goes from left to right very quickly. If you're on good headphones, that's easy for you to hear now. That would be exaggerated. And now we have this percussion loop, which is super nice. This is basically one of those things you can use as a song starter. You can drop this in an empty project file and then start building your song around it, because you just put a kick below this. And now you can start coming up with song ideas. And what if we take off all the EQing? Yeah, that's super nice. This almost sounds like from Ben Böhmer Vale from Anjunadeep. And this is the sort of acoustic head loop here, which helps make it more, you know, analog-ish. And this one is more to the left, gets some room reverb as well, and then cutting off some of the lower information, some of the higher information, and slightly compressing the signal. And compressing the signal behind the reverb, and that's what makes it more, you know, cloudy and wet. You get these tails behind the transients. More washed out in a way. And then we have some noise fills, noise fill element here. Since this is more like this smooth melodic house style, we don't really need these hard snare elements. We rather take something like this and pretend it's a snare. You know, we run it through a vocoder and we run it through this EQ and another channel EQ, and then we boost it through the overdrive element. And then it goes through this ping pong delay here, where we are focusing only on the high frequencies of the sound. Okay, so cutting some mids and adding a bit of noise on top of what we already have, but not too much, only 15% applied if I would exaggerate this. This is not really what we're looking for, so just a tad. And one more clap. That's kind of our impact thing. We are then using the hybrid reverb with 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds of decay time here. You know, and this one is right before the drop, so. Okay, so these are our drums. Sounding really good. And let's keep going. Let's take a look at synths and bass line and everything. So we have our bass line here. CEA. And we just have Wavetable playing almost a perfect saw wave here, slightly positioned below it in oscillator 1, and oscillator 2 is playing the exact saw wave. So we they're slightly sitting next to one another. We have the pitch down an octave. You can always, that's always good to mess with. You know, if you hold shift arrow up, you can jump up an octave and check your sounds. What's a good octave for my sound? Whenever I'm, you know, looking for new sounds and I'm going through presets or whatnot, then, you know, this is very handy. Shift arrow key down, quickly check what it sounds like an octave lower. because sometimes you have these sounds that have this sweet spot and it's not always perfectly obvious where that is. So this is always a nice way of checking where you need to go with the sound. We have a matrix overview here where we can see that envelope 2 controls the filter and envelope 3 controls the pitch. So let's take a look at envelope 2. It has this bit longer attack time here. It's kind of driving in this filter. And then it takes 4 seconds to bring it back to its original position. And then envelope 3, you know, helps us with this pitchy thing at the beginning. Well, this one. And we just smoothly apply this here. And behind, and we also have this glide. And we are setting this to mono because we just want to play one note here. It's a bass sound. We don't want to do detuned stuff. And we're setting the glide to 400 milliseconds roughly. And that's the glide between, you know, going from one note to another. And behind it, 2 instances of erosion. You know, this is always kind of helpful to make it sound a bit more analog. But then this autofilter is also playing a big part in that because we are using the OSR setting here and we're adding a bit more drive into the whole scenario. It sounds more digital somehow. You know, we're beefing it up and then, you know, taking off some of the highs. But you also have to keep in mind we already used the PRD filter here and put up the drive there as well, which also helps achieve a more analog-ish type sound. And the next element helping with that is our chorus ensemble thing here. You just want a little bit of this in there as well. Keeps it, makes it a bit warmer somehow. And now we have this mid-side EQ here, just taking care of some elements in the middle and removing some of the low end on the side, not to, you know, mess up our low end or introduce phasing there. And then after all, we have the saturator here. By the way, I also have this, our 5th return is return overdrive. So this is a fuzzy overdrive type element, which if we turn this off, and then, well, let's listen to what this effect does on its own. So it emphasizes the fuzzy elements in our higher frequencies in our treble area and makes them cut a bit more through. So we have a cleaner mix. We don't have like all this muffled analog sound in the middle of our track, but it's actually still clean. And then again, we have this sidechain element here. Okay, synths group, let's take a look at the plug sound. So a lot going on here, and let's actually copy it over there and take another part out of this part here in front and move that to the back as well. Here it's much shorter, in terms of the decay of the sound. Like attack, decay, sustain, release. Attack is this part at the beginning of the sound. Decay is how long this main element of the note play. And you can see it's being increased over time. By the way, this is also one of the sounds when, if I would pick this up, I would check what does it sound an octave lower. Does that make a good bass sound, maybe? Okay, somebody else is cutting off something here. And now you would have to get rid of some delay. That's a great bass sound. Make sure you're on headphones or good speakers. Super cool bass sound as well. But that's not the point of this part of the track. Let's go back actually. Turn on the group EQ again. So this is the entire synths group, and since we already have a bass line down here, we don't want to mess with any of the frequencies below 100 Hertz. That's why we are cutting them off right at the beginning of the entire group. Okay, so what's going on here? We have this sound. That's another saw wave, and this is a little bit of a, it's called noise broken filter. So we are introducing a little bit of noise here, and then we have a whole bunch of automations at play. I'm not going to go through all of them because it will take quite a while, but we have the filters being automated. We have the decay of our amplifier being automated. So that's the one making the sound shorter and longer. And basically that's one of the key takeaways for the style, because it's so repetitive and because, you know, you're kind of hypnotizing your audience here. Keeping it interesting in this style is being achieved through automation. You know, you keep pounding away your pattern, but you decrease the attack, you increase the attack, then you play around with filters, you play around with the decay, you maybe even transpose it up an octave like we are doing here in this part, when strings go up an octave and even the plucks. And, you know, this is achieved by this mapped knob here, which controls the semitones here. And this one, again, the mapping is something you can do by clicking on the M and then assigning all these parameters and giving them minimum values at which these knobs start and maximum values at which these knobs end, manipulating the sound. So this is, you know, melodic house at 122 BPM is kind of similar to trance at 138 or 140 BPM. We are basically playing very similar harmonic content. At this speed, we are playing it much drier. So a lot less reverb, and it sounds more analog. It sounds less digital. Trancey stuff can sound much more digital. And as we are playing these repetitive patterns much drier and less washed out with reverbs, we need to find ways of keeping these patterns interesting, and that's what we can achieve on our main melodic elements with a lot of automation. So moving the stuff around, making it shorter, making it longer, and basically playing around a lot with the ADSR and with the filters, and maybe with some of the effects towards, you know, the end. Let's actually look at effects. So this is just a simple low cut here, but then we also have a chorus ensemble. That's another one you can automate sometimes. And then we have this delay here. And then we have this grain delay effect we sort of built for ourselves here and called particle diluter. And that's also how you can keep it interesting. You don't have to use tons of instruments. You know, we have 20 tracks until the effects section and then 5 more tracks. So this is not a track heavy piece of music here. We are using a lot of household elements to achieve our stuff. This particle diluter is using a grain delay and then has a reverb right behind it with a decay time of 5 at this position, but I guess it also moves around. And behind it, we just roll off the low end and some of the high end information, because this is the frequency range where we want to introduce like this resulting effect. And we can listen to it. That's what the effect is doing. This is what the dry signal is doing. So we are kind of, this is called parallel processing. This is kind of a trick to keep a lot of your original signal, but also introduce a big chunk of the effect that you want to throw on top of it without losing the original sound's transients. Okay, and let's take a look at the next melodic element below it, which is this one. And this one kind of helps us with putting together the harmonic content. So we are not automating this one like crazy. We still have a bunch of processing going on here, but basically this is just, we need saw waves and then we need them very smooth. That's why the attack time is longer. And then we don't open up the filters too much, because open filters are already taken care of with this melodic element. Now we just want to support that one with a sort of counter melodic element, but not really, you know, there's only one protagonist. We don't want too many protagonists. So this one is staying in the background. So don't worry too much about this processing. Basically, this is a little bit of delay, a little bit of filtering, and a little bit of reverb behind it. Now let's take a look at this pad and at our chord progression. So that's also very simple, straightforward. This is actually C major. So there's a major third here, followed by a minor third. C, E, 3 semitones in between, that's a major third, and 2 semitones in between E and G is a minor third. But we're taking the third, this is the 5th, by the way, and we're taking the third and just moving it up an octave. And C is our root note, and it gets repeated down here. Just sounds so much better and nicer and more optimistic somehow when you play the third an octave up. And we do the same thing with this E minor chord here, which is E, G, B. Has a very typical minor quality, and so this is a minor third followed by a major third. That makes it a minor chord. And again, we are taking the third and moving it up an octave. And again, down here we have another root note E. And our next chord, A minor. Why is it a minor chord? Because again, we are starting at the root note A, and then we're skipping 2 semitones and we're getting to C. So that's a minor third. And then it's followed by a major third between C and E. And again, we are playing the third an octave higher. And then we are going back a step up with B minor, minor third, major third, and again the third is an octave up. So this is super symmetrical. And that's our chord progression here. And this is our detuned pad. So that's kind of the information for the sides. We are using, you know, this sine wave here combined with a saw wave. And we're sending that through 20 decibels per octave cutting off filter as well. And then giving it a long attack time, long decay time. And then we also say, hey, let's play this with 3 voices, not only 1. So it's getting more detuned, and we're using the unison setting shimmer and applying it like 20%. That's what makes the sound wider compared to just 1 voice. Very thin. And this one is much thicker. And then we roll off the low end here, and we just basically roll off the low end 3 times in a row. You know, this is what happens when you produce something and then you, at some point, you're mixing it and you're like, oh, I think I need to remove even more low end from the sound. And that's when you know, introduce another EQ to quickly get that done. You could also put all of this processing into one EQ device. And we have another chord element. And now that's the one that's sitting more in the middle of things, while this one is sitting more to the sides. And combined, they start making a lot of sense. Now this is as well a saw wave, as almost everything we are playing here, and then we are combining it with something that gets a little bit more into the area of a square wave. But ever so slightly mixed in, because we are at 0 decibels here and at -18 here. And again, this filter is slowly opening up for this pad sound. And I'm not going to go through all the processing here. Basically, we're filtering a little bit and we're adding a bunch of reverb onto the sound. And this is something that, you know, it looks like this when you have a sound in a different project file and then you remember, oh, I had this warm pad somewhere else. Let me copy it over here and then just add some processing tweaks to it. And then these devices start getting this long. But if we built it from scratch now, we could achieve it easier. Okay, and then we have this string element. You know, just emphasizing on always playing it for 1 bar. And this is synthetic strings you can find in your Ableton instruments. And on top of that, we are messing around. We're using this envelope shaper, and we are messing around with this auto pan here. So rolling off some low end in this part, but let's take a look at what this auto pan is doing. It's moving around and it's being controlled by this shape and by these parameters. So we are messing around with the amount and we are messing around with the frequency rate. you know, we're saying, hey, we don't want to mess around with the amount all the way up just until 42% of this knob, and we want to start at 10%, and we want to start at 23% from this frequency knob and go potentially all the way up to 100%, but we're not 100% sure of that, because we also define our full range amount to only go up to 75% here. So we're not really going all the way up, but we are sort of following this shape, moving up these knobs. So basically it doesn't start right away. It takes a while to go all the way up, and that's when these strings first play kind of stable, and then they get more fluffy towards the end. And this type of effect helps you make your electronic track sound more natural. Because we are not playing everything all the time in the same intonation, in the same kind of way. We're also leaving room in parts where it's not playing, and that's what makes your music more interesting, more dynamic. On top of it, we have this typical house high string element, which usually plays maybe the root note or the fifth of the key which your song is in. And this is very typical for house music. Just like gives it tension. So what kind of processing happens on the synth group? We are getting in a low cut, and we are treating it like a guitar solo in terms of compression settings here. We run everything through one compressor, gluing it together a little, and then we are sidechaining it slightly. And let's take a quick look again at the drums group. What did we do here? We ran it through the drums bus and added a bit of drive there, and then also a glue compressor. And then we had this breakdown filter for breakdowns. Where we're just taking out information towards the end of our arrangement patterns. And then again, some EQ shaping things at the bottom, at the top, and in the middle slightly. Okay, quick look at effects. We don't have many. We have a little bit of ambience. Just some public square scene type thing. And then we have reverse right. That's always a nice way. Again, a very smooth transition effect, because we are not in some super aggressive genre here. We want it more smooth, and we need those more subtle effects. And what do we have here? Grain noise. So this is basically an organic percussion loop, and then we throw a whole lot of delay and reverb on top of it. Sounds a bit like, you know, in the recording, like you should take a bunch of stuff and run it through some plastic pipe. Yeah. We just take the high information here. Okay, we also have this thing called noise splash. That's a bunch of organic sounding white noise, and a good source for proper white noise in Ableton is, for example, operator noise white, this wave. And then panned left, panned right, low cuts, a bit of erosion on top of it, a bit of auto pan on top of it. By the way, this auto pan here in the string is, the phase is, it's kind of like it's set to an sort of an LFO setting, because we are not, we don't distinguish between the two sides. We are saying, hey, we want to apply this shape on the entire signal, left and right. That's important, because otherwise this effect doesn't work that well. Okay, what did we miss? It's just this build effect. Yeah, we kind of use this as a riser, as a smooth riser effect. Again, we are not in full-on Tomorrowland main stage EDM here. We are more subtle, and that's why we also need more subtle effects for composing our instrumentation. Okay, so these are the rules, more or less, of this genre. Learn the rules first so you can break them later. Now you can take whatever you want from this and incorporate it into your own music. We took a look at the groups, at the different elements of the tracks. We looked at the drums, we looked at the bass line, at the synths, and then at the effects. Took a closer look at how it's all put together. The arrangement is super straightforward. It just, you know, starts with outkick elements, and then bass and kicks come in, and then some more melodies play on top. But we are basically, you know, already there. We are already playing the chords, but we are just filtering everything in over time. And since it's so repetitive, we are playing around a lot with filters and ADSR shapes to keep it interesting. That's important in this more hypnotic type genre. Don't soak it all in reverb. You're not making trance music. That would be more a recipe for that kind of music, with long reverb tails and whatnot, you know, and then sidechaining the reverb tails. So that would be a different type of approach. And then you can add in high octaves higher up to emphasize in your climactic parts. Yeah, and also make use of LFOs to make certain parts of your track more fluffy, but don't overdo it, I would say. And yeah, those are, I think, some of the main takeaways of creating this genre. And the nice thing is with Ableton, if you really focus on these key elements, then you don't necessarily even need third-party plugins to put it all together. That's kind of super interesting, because I think this sounds pretty nice already, just coming out of the box Ableton. Okay, so thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this session. Check the description, check the show notes for links to this project file, to the D Premium sample pack if you're interested. Also, you can check out some of the bundles we have on Production Music Live, and also some of the online courses we have in our academy. Always worth learning, checking out, and maybe learning something new. Feel free to give it a like and a thumbs up, and comment below what you want to see next, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!